Bill Gates. So I know we're talking about the conspiracy and like, as we were discussing like how funny this is.
Everybody thinks he's a James Bond villain now.
Well, and like I think when we first started talking, right, it's like, there's obviously some funny shit about it and like just kind of how it like, when people come to these kind of conclusions, like the ridiculous level they go to.
Yeah.
Right. And like, but I remember thinking to myself, like, this was one of those first ones where when I heard the conspiracy, I literally was like, I had a visceral reaction of like, I can't believe this is where we are. Like, I can't believe this is how far we've come, you know? And, to think that like one of the greatest human beings maybe ever is now the problem. And he's trying to kill everybody and he created this, disease. And it just, it feels like we've gotten to a place that's just way too far.
Yeah, I think people don't realize if he's trying to kill everybody, then who's he going to rule over if he wants to be a ruler over the world?
Well, and that's the funny thing, right? Is like I remember like, when I first heard it, I was like, okay, this can't be something that like a lot of people believe, right? But then you ask people questions and like that's one of the things people would say, like, oh, well, he just wants power.
Yeah.
And you go, like, okay, if he wanted power, like, well, he did invent like one of the biggest companies in the world and he ran it for a very long time and he theoretically could still be running it if he wanted to, but he quit to do philanthropy. So I don't know, the power argument's kind of hard, right? Like, he wants power. And then what's funny is like people go, oh, but he just wants more money.
Yeah.
And then I go like, okay, well, when he left Microsoft, he was the richest person in the world. And although I think I saw some stat, right? They were saying how since he left Microsoft, I think he's been giving away more money every year than most people have given their whole lives.
Oh, wow.
So like he's literally trying to give it away. And can't.
He has so much of it, he can't get rid of it.
Right. And so what's funny is like you go, okay, well, he has so much money, he could never spend it. And even though he stopped working at the company, he could have had all the power and could have been making way more money if he wanted to.
Yeah.
He's still been, and maybe now I think it's like the third, but like was like the second richest dude for the longest time. Was the first for a very long time. Yeah. Then became the second when he left. But meaning, okay, so he wants power, but he left one of the most powerful companies.
Right.
He wants money, but he has more than he can spend, and he's trying to give it away, and he can't. Yeah. And then it's like, oh, but he wants, fame and recognition. It's like, well, like he invented, software and hardware that like almost everybody in the world uses.
He already is. Like, he's already known. He's already got the recognition.
Yeah, exactly. So like, this is where I think it becomes so funny, right? Like when you go, how does someone really think this?
Makes you wonder if they were in Bill Gates' position, well, is that what they would do then? Would they try to kill people or try to get more money or just want the power? And is that why they think, well, this is why he's doing it?
It's a good thought, right?
Yeah, I mean, because it's like when somebody's like a homophobe, they say, well, that's probably because he's really gay himself, but he's just acting. I mean, that's not always true, right? But,
right. But I know what you mean. Yeah. It's like, and maybe that's just like in that example, like you're so ill-experienced with understanding what that would be like to be that person. Yeah. That like your mind goes to the lowest common denominator, right? Like, well, every gay guy wants to have sex with every other gay guy. It's like, not really. Or, well, every billionaire is supposed to make more and more money and they want power. It's like, well, not really, because like once you've had it, you don't really care about it as much. So the argument of like, is that what you would do? Like, yeah, because you've never had it. Like, you've never had money and power. Yeah. So of course you go, yeah, like he wants more money and more power. But the arguments are crazy when you think about it, right? Like you think about how extreme, if you stopped and thought about it for a second, you'd go, money? No. Power? No. Recognition? No.
Yeah.
But here was one of the funny ones, right? So I remember I was out one night and I asked us like, so we're at this bar, we're hanging out with like, this table of girls. And I remember asking like, hey, do you guys heard of this? You believe this? So me and this one girl get in this conversation about it. And she is like a person that if you saw just on the outside, if you're just judging her off her looks, you would never think that this girl believed this. Never. Like she looked like super sweet, like maybe a little bit older, like she was a mom, like she had a great job, like she worked for a professional company, like very well put together, very well spoken. You would never think. But she, no matter what I said, kept rattling off like, yeah, this is money, then I'm it's power. And then you get down to the point where it's like, well, listen, like we're not rich billionaires, so like we're not rich bored billionaires. Like we don't know what they want to do.
So now he's just bored. He's just doing it because he's bored.
No, it got to that place. It got to that place, dude. It was like, yeah, we're not rich, bored billionaires. Like, we don't know what they like to do. I'm like, Okay,
I was just like chilling out.
right. Well, but meaning, regardless of what it was, I'm like, think about the idea that like, do you realize how hard it would be to like try to create a new virus?
Yeah.
And then try to like figure out a way to like, you know, not only manufacture it, but like really get it to like, you know, be detailed in a way that's going to be distributed amongst people in the way that you want. And then like the people that have to be involved to help you create this and then to distribute it. And then like, it's so much more work to do that than it would be to just stay at Microsoft and make more money and then like, you know, just buy people. I don't know, like you could do something stupid. Like,
see, that's why I don't believe in a lot of these conspiracy theories anyways. Not just Bill Gates, with anyone, because not only with all the work it would take and all the people, but like, I don't want to do any of that. Why would I want to, if I was rich like that, why would I want to start a conspiracy that big? It's too much work. Like you said, like I'm too lazy to do all that.
And I think that's the whole thing, right? Is that like, you know, the equation would have to go something like whatever the amount of effort you'd put into something, you'd have to get at least that amount out, but more realistically, way more.
Yeah.
So if you go, if you were going to do this, for the effort it would take, that reward's got to be really big.
Oh, it's like a business. Like, if you're going to spend this much money, your profits got to be X amount.
And so meaning if you're going to spend years of your life developing this crazy disease and, you know, start a pandemic and then try to manipulate it by going on TED and having a talk and warning people about it, but really you're just tricking, like all of that thinking and strategy and planning and development, like what's the payout?
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, he might want to just control people, control the world. You go, okay, but like play it through. Like why?
Yeah, and how does he control everybody on all the different continents and everything and all the countries and?
Well, not only that, like all the variables you have to think about like, well, how does this country respond versus us? And
like stuff had to fall into place for the vaccine, or not the vaccine, for the virus to have all the stuff, all the bad stuff happening, like Trump firing the pandemic team. Like, did Bill Gates plan for that? And it just fell right. It happened like so perfectly. Like he knew, yes, Trump did exactly what I wanted to do. Now I can get my vaccine out there. And like,
well, and some people would say, well, maybe they're in cahoots. Right? Like some people would go, well, maybe they were planning that together. We don't know. We're not bored billionaires.
We're not bored billionaires.
Maybe they planned this. Maybe Bill Gates helped Donald Trump get in the White House.
We should become billionaires and start the Bored Billionaires Club.
And see how many diseases we come up with. I'm guessing it's zero
stuff we couldn't do.
Yeah, I guess it'd be zero. And with that, and that's the funny thing, right? Is that like I have this theory, like I wrote about this in my book, right? Was what I call kind of like the levels of life, and you know, it's not based on any real science. It's just like my thinking on how people tend to evolve.
Yeah.
And I think like when you're a kid and you'd say you're a baby, like you need other people, right, to survive, for food, for comfort. But then you kind of, as you grow up and maybe say you're a teenager, you really start to like admire other people and you look for like heroes, right? Like kids tend to look up to like sports stars and, Disney princesses and, actors and singers and whoever. But then you kind of get to a place where like you start to really want to work on yourself and almost emulate those characters and you want to build yourself. But then you tend to then, I think, see that like that those characteristics in other people that you may know and then want to try to copy that. That's why when we become, let's say, teenagers into college, we tend to like act like our friends and follow them and become very socially influenced. But then by the time you kind of figure out like, hey, maybe we're in our 30s or 40s, we figure out who we are, we're like, you know what, I don't care what people think, like I'm just be me.
Yeah.
Then eventually you go, you know what, that feels pretty good. And then what you try to generally do is you try to help other people
be them,
be themselves and be that, right? Because like, well, hey, look, I spent my whole life worrying about what other people thought and trying to be this thing. Now I kind of feel good about just who I am and I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
So you go to other people. Hey, I want to help you guys. I see this. And then you go, if you become really successful, not just in your own personal like development, but like in life, I think most people who are either billionaires or multimillionaires or have done really great things, they tend to go down the route of like they want to be a mentor. They want to help other people. They want to teach you what they did. They want to show you, hey, it's not that hard. And then some people, like let's say, I don't know, like Elon Musk or Bill Gates, for example, like they get to a place where maybe they've not only helped themselves, they've helped other people, but they want to help like the world. And at Bill Gates kind of level, which I think is a super rare level, they want to help the future. It's like people that they'll never even meet. And I think that's where like, if a lot of people, we get money, our first thought is like, yeah, us. But then after a while, we're like, well, it's not as much fun to spend this money unless I have people with me. So then you share it with your friends and family. But then you want to share it with the world, and then if you get to the extreme level, in my theory, it's like, then you want to share it with the future.
Yeah.
And so if you're a bored billionaire, I'm guessing that you're probably going to want to either help people, Help the world or help the future?
Yeah, there's this one saying, I forget exactly the wording, but it's something along the lines of like, like great nations or great communities are built by people who plant a tree, but they know they'll never be able to enjoy its shade.
Right.
And I know that's not the exact wording, but it's,
It's a fantastic, way to think about this, right? Is it like a lot of people, don't understand that because they're so busy trying to just get shade.
Yeah.
And so when someone's had an abundance of shade, they tend to say like, okay, well, this has been nice. Let me try to help other people enjoy what I've been enjoying. I think
even if I'm not going to benefit from it, but the world is going to benefit from, or it might benefit from it.
Absolutely. And so, that's why I kind of think this idea of, the bored billionaire who wants to go down this evil route of like, and then the other thing that made me think too is like, okay, if you're Bill Gates, right, and you've been a smart dude your whole life, successful in an extreme way, had all the money in the world, power, recognition, all these things, right? Like, what's the odds that you're jaded and like, really like, I want to kill everyone? Like, what would be the odds that a dude who's lived that incredible of a life
he wouldn't be,
would be so angry that he wants to spend a significant part of his life making a disease that's going to cause, I mean, like, it's so ridiculous that it really got me to the point where I was like, wow, like, we're really this far in our culture, in our life. We're like, when Bill Gates becomes the enemy, it just feels too crazy. Yeah.
I'd imagine most bored billionaires actually either get into a new business that they haven't done before just because it's something new, or if they come up with a new hobby, maybe they go hang gliding because they haven't done, if they're doing the stuff that they can afford to do that most people really can't, that they've never done before. And then once they do all that, then they probably just chill out and figure out how to plant those trees for the other people.
Well, and I think that goes a lot in stages, right? And like part of what you're saying is like, hey, you start off with maybe I want to experience things. Like, what haven't I done? What haven't I experienced in this life? And then you want to share those experiences. And then eventually you go like, hey, like I'd love for tons of people to experience this because guess what? If I'm happy and I can make the people around me happy and potentially even the world happy, then I get to live in a pretty happy world. Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Yeah. Like, why would you create a virus? Like, I got to live around all these sick people, man. Damn.
I mean, and or people who are upset, or it's like, it's just so backwards in the thinking, and So again, it was eye opening to talk to some of these people. Like, well, he wants money, he wants power, recognition.
All stuff he's already got.
And it was like, and then one of the ones she said was legacy. Like
he's already got that.
And I'm like,
he's not even dead yet. He's already got that.
Yeah, he's I think that's pretty much well cemented. And I'm like, and even if he did create, and it's just for fodder, right? It was like, okay, let's just say he did this. Like, what's bigger? Like a pandemic for, call it 6 months, a year, even 2 years, or Windows?
Right.
What's a bigger legacy? Like, even if he didn't really do this, like Windows is so much more.
Even if Windows Vistas gave him a little bit of shit, but Windows is still the bigger legacy. Like,
but meaning, Microsoft and Windows and these things that were transformative in our world would still be at the top of his headstone. Yeah. Like, it would then be like, jaded billionaire.
And at the end, he created the coronavirus.
Right. I mean, it would be so far down the list. Like, so legacy is also ridiculous. Like, it's just hard to think of like, well, you go to his personality, you go to like, well, like, we don't know what bored people do. He wants this. And like, it's just such a ridiculously crazy thing.
If everybody's dead, who's there to see the legacy? Jesus.
Well, and that's another thing too, right? This idea I think that people have around the government or the world or billionaires, they want to kill people. Yeah. And I always say, look, no, Jeff Bezos would not want to kill people. Yeah. He wants you to buy Amazon Prime. You have to be alive for that. Yeah. Or, I want you to use Windows. I want you to buy an iPhone. I want you to be on like I want you to buy a Tesla. Like, if you're dead or you're incapacitated, you're not spending money. You're not buying our products. And so like this idea that like the government or, these people like have this plan to kill you, like, well, it's population control. Well, why? Because the more people there are, the more money that gets spent. Like the more that goes in the system. And it's been very well proven that the more money you give people, the more they spend. Yeah. Which means, again, like look at the pandemic, right? Like we've had basically the highest unemployment ever. We had the highest.
Bezos made more money.
And the companies got richer. And so if people were staying home and weren't working, were sad and were dying, and those companies were failing, you go, okay, well that seems more in line. But if they're making more money, they don't want to kill you. Yeah. This idea of population control is like, but which again, I don't, I think a lot of these type of things tend to come from just mistrust in general. Yeah. So it's like, in my mind, it's either like not knowing the system or mistrust.
Yeah.
And it's like you get to the place where like, where if Bill Gates is the enemy, it's because like, not only can I not think of any better reason, but like I kind of want to believe, because it kind of takes the onus off of me of like, well, if I didn't become successful, if I didn't get rich, if I didn't get the job I wanted, if the girl I like turned me down, like, well, like the whole system's corrupt anyway.
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
That's true.
Doesn't matter what you do, because you know what, the government's going to control it. Or you know what? You could become rich, but guess what? Government's going to take your money away. And it's like, well, does that just take?
Or they're going to take your firstborn in order, you know.
Yeah. Or they're going to microchip them and like make them a slave and like. So it's like, you can't have it every way, but like in my mind, I think it all boils down to the idea that like it takes the onus off of people a little bit. That like, because the Bill Gates thing was honestly one of the very first things that like not only sparked this like immediate like visceral reaction, but also made me go like, it's so illogical.
Yeah.
It's so illogical that it can't be the answer. That the answer has to be, you just needed some excuse.
Yeah.
You needed to point to something, because like I've always said, like I think at the end of the day, people don't tend to blame themselves.
Right. No, they don't.
Right. They want to find a reason. Like they want to have something. And I think Bill Gates was like, someone makes it up. Sounds believable. Okay, it's him. Yeah. Like, because
I understand that, because I used to be like that when I was younger. When it came to like stupid things at like work, like I would always try to, well, so and so didn't follow up on this, and then But now as an older, I'm like, I messed up. What do we do to fix it?
And it becomes and
it's easier.
Well, because it becomes about a solution.
Yeah.
It becomes like, okay, listen, we can sit here for 3 months and just argue about who made a mistake, or we can just spend 3 weeks and figure it out, and solve it. And guess what? Then we have less mistakes, less problems, less this. But that takes a little bit of work. And I think sometimes people are so adverse to doing that initial work that like, man, the excuse is so much easier.
Yeah.
It's so much more convenient. Like, well, the government's hiding these pedophiles that are eating babies because they're doing this. And like, you go, really? Like, okay. Like,
so that's why you're not making any money at your job?
Maybe, okay. But then what's the solution?
Yeah.
How do we solve it then? Right? Because like no one brings up a solution.
Right.
Everyone will point out the problem. Well, Bill Gates. Well, these celebrities. Well, where's the solution?
And then as soon as a billionaire comes up with the solution, hey, I know how we get those pedophiles out of there. Right. Oh, he must be one of the pedophiles, and if he's on the inside, he knows where to find them.
Correct. And I think it's just it's a super sad thing. And I think, like I said, like at the end of the day, it was actually one of the first like kind of prompts for me to go, hey, I really want to like start a podcast or YouTube channel or something just to talk about this stuff, because that was the first one for me that like really hit me in the gut and was like, wow. This is extreme. Like Bill Gates, extreme.
And it's even funnier about these people with these theories is, you'll tell them, well, no, you'll tell them information you might have read from somewhere that you just know, and then well, you can't believe everything you read, can you? You don't believe everything. Okay, well, where'd you hear your information? Oh, well, I read it on something.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so you're believing everything you read then.
Right. Well, and not only that, but say for example, I've had conversations with people where I've said, hey, look, like, no, I've watched, a couple of YouTube videos, I read a few articles, I talked to a couple of these people, I asked someone who works, and like, I might say, 6, 7, 8 pieces of like data collection. Yeah. And then you go to that person, what'd you do? Well, I saw this thread on Reddit that then, you go, okay, so then anything else?
Yeah.
No.
Exactly. Right.
Like, or I kind of heard this thing, and then they kind of almost even misheard it. And you go, but again, that to me still comes back to the work. It's like, even if you believe the negative thing, like, you still won't even do the work to kind of confirm that it really is the real negative thing that you thought.
As soon as they read that first thing that confirms what they believe, then they're like, oh, yeah, I did the work. See, it's true. It's right there.
And that's it. And that's all I have to do. And that's what's so crazy about all this is that, like, it feels like, our society as a whole is just becoming so much more, like, jaded and tribal and, choosing sides and wanting to, like, point fingers and say, well, no, it's the Republicans. Oh, no, it's the Democrats. Oh, well, it's, these kind of people who, are fighting for these type of rights, or it's these groups that are rallying. Like, it's always someone, and then yet there's no solution.
Yeah.
There's no real thought out solution. It's just, well, they're the bad guys. Okay, so what do we do? Well, I don't know. Someone's got to stop them. It's like, well, but there's no answer. It's like we can point out problems all day long.
Nowadays, to all these people, oh, Trump, he's gonna fix it all.
Well, even that's not a solution, right?
Yeah.
It's just still you passing the buck.
Right,
saying,
exactly. You're
okay,
right.
Well, when he comes to save us.
Yeah.
Okay, but if he doesn't, then what? Well, I don't know, man. But someone like.
Well, then it's rigged against him too.
It's still someone else. It's still something else. It's still take the onus off of me, whether good or bad. I just don't have to think about it. It's something else, and that's this really sad thing, because I think for my whole life I've always been more of like a problem solver. Like, I don't care what the problem is. Like, I just want to find the solution. I want to think about it. Let's talk through it. Like, I don't care about being right. Like, I want to get it right. I want to make sure that whatever we come to is right.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you came up with it, I came up with it, whoever. Like, it's just the idea of, like, at the end, whatever is the best is the best.
Yeah.
And it should play out that way. And yet no one really talks about that because we're so busy talking about problems or pointing fingers or choosing sides or going, hey, let's have this collective group think.
Yeah. I wonder if people they like the battle of the debate or argument more than the actual solving of the problems, maybe.
I mean, perhaps, but I'd say, like, if you look at those type of arguments, it's like, what are they battling for?
That's true.
Right?
Too.
It's like, I'm kind of just battling for the idea that, like, no, I'm battling for my belief that the system's bad.
Yeah.
Because then I don't have to learn about the system. I don't have to try to manipulate it. I don't have to come up with a solution. It's just like, well, look, like, the government's trying to screw you. Celebrities are corrupt. People with money are the rich and powerful, and they don't care about us. And, like, I mean, it's just like you're battling for this ideology of, I am who I am, and I'm in this place, and yet I don't really want to have to think about doing something or thinking the next thing. So I'd rather fight you to death over saying that, like, no, these things are crazy and you don't know for sure. And yeah, I can't prove them and I don't have a solution, but it doesn't mean they're not happening, because what's the point anyway?
Yeah.
And that's a much easier path than saying, okay, look, like, let me really do some research here, or let me think about how I could become influential, and maybe I can, run for the Senate or Congress or, and basically say, hey, like, I'm going to put myself in this position where I can make some rules. I can change some things. Or I'm going to start a company. And in my company, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to pay people. And this is how we're going to handle our employees. Like, no one's stopping those people from doing that.
That's true.
And yet you can, talk about, like, Microsoft or Bill Gates and go, yeah, they're evil. Like, well, you haven't been down their path and you're not even trying.
Yeah.
And even if you are, like, you're not coming up with solutions to the bigger problems that we're really talking about. And not that anyone can just snap their fingers and come up with a solution, because this is hard stuff. But I think it's so much better to be focused on the solution than it is to keep pointing out the problems and then passing the buck and going, well, it's Bill Gates or Donald Trump will save us.
Yeah.
Like, there's just no onus.
That's another thing, though, also, by the way, as much as people claim that the billionaires are evil, there are a lot of people on the other side that billionaires are going to save us all. Which is also equally as bad. Like, you can't put all your trust in them, but you can't, like, you shouldn't be mistrusting Bill Gates.
But look, either way, right? Like, if we remove the tag or the name of billionaire, like, you take away the moniker of billionaire, it just becomes people. Right? It just becomes, you shouldn't trust anyone beyond the work that you've done. And again, you should trust in a relative way. So again, if we're talking about, I don't know, viruses, maybe Dr. Fauci is a lot more skilled and knowledgeable about how that works than me, or my cousin Jason, right? It's like he probably knows more. Now let's assume he's wrong. He's still more right in his wrong than we are, than we are in any way that we're right. Like, any aspect of us being right is still less than his, because his is so much based in fact and knowledge and history and experience. He's
forgotten more about virology than any of us will ever know.
Well, exactly. And so, so that doesn't mean you have to trust him 100%.
Right. But you're going to trust him over...
Well, my cousin Jason, it's like, if it's between him and my cousin Jason, I should probably choose him. Right? Like, meaning, like, and if I'm going to give him, 90% validity. I mean, my cousin, he's a smart guy, but he gets 20.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be on that level, right?
Yeah.
And it should be, broken into the regions of, like, where's the person's expertise. Like, it's funny how, like I say, I watch, say, some YouTube video about money, and it's like, how to make $1 million in 30 seconds with no money down.
Yeah.
And 2 million people watch that. And then there's a Warren Buffett video, and it's the most impactful video I've seen on money, and I go, oh, wow, like 700 people watch that. Jeez. So then you go, well, where are people putting their attention? And who are you really actually giving credence to? Because now someone can say, wow, man, if 2 million people watch that, like, maybe this is pretty good. 700 people watch. So not only is the 700 people such a small number that makes you almost potentially doubt it, but, like, it doesn't even come up in the algorithm for you because nobody's watched it.
Yeah.
And so if you start looking up how to make money, it's like the guy with 2 million views on some bullshit, he's going to show up. So now people keep getting this information, and it's like, look, who are we valuing?
Yeah.
Like, the guy you've never heard of who's selling you this dream, or Warren Buffett, who's been, basically confirmed at this point, that his whole life he knows how to make money and he's done a really good job at it.
Yeah.
And whether you agree with him or like him or Ray Dalio or whoever, right? Like, it's like they're still a lot more credible than your cousin Jason.
Yeah.
Right? And they should probably be given more respect. And as you're allocating your pie of like, well, who should I believe? Well, it's probably possible that you should believe those guys a little bit more.
Yeah.
And this is again, this comes back to I think just work, because it's like we instinctually want to believe that there's a cheat code to make the $1 million in 30 seconds with no money down. And Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and Elon, they're telling us this really hard route, and that doesn't sound fun.
Yeah.
Like
they're evil.
Well, that guy who's telling me, but he said, well, and I honestly think in the back of their minds, there's this idea of maybe, but you never know, maybe.
Yeah.
Because in my instinct says it'd be really nice to make $1 million in 30 seconds with no money down.
And you know what? Maybe somebody did get lucky and do that, but that's not going to work for everybody.
Right.
And it's not going to work 99% of the time.
No. And
it's like the poker. Hey, I'm in millions of dollars just playing World Series of Poker in Vegas. That's all you got to do, baby. Win a tournament.
Yeah. Well, even without the respect of all the effort to become good at poker. But but it's the idea that I think we instinctually want this cheat code. We want this we want this very quick fix, and we know it's not likely, but we kind of like, well,
we have that hope.
Possible, right?
Yeah.
And I think the inverse, what we're talking about with Bill Gates and conspiracies, is the exact same thing. It's like, I don't want to question myself, but like, so maybe it's possible that they're evil and they want to kill all of us. So then it takes the onus off of me, but it's still the same thing that like, what takes work is for you to make yourself better, work harder, solve problems, think, plan, invest, save, build stuff. What's easier is to go, Bill Gates is trying to kill us.
Yeah.
And you'd rather go, okay, I know it's kind of not likely, but it's possible. It's possible. So, you know what? What's the point anyway? I could throw up my hands and not try. And this is sad. This is a super sad thing, dude.
Yeah.